Welcome to your High Vibe Business. I'm Laura DeFranco.
And I'm Donnie Bovine.
And we are here to help you create your badass high vibe business.
What does it mean to have a high vibe business? It's that business you're excited about. It lights you up and it helps you unleash that inner badass and really go for it.
You are a lover and a warrior, and you're here to change the world with your business. We will give you the strategy and resources you need to take this all to the next level.
You shouldn't do this alone. Start hanging out with other badass entrepreneurs and watch how fast your business grows.
You guys, Donnie Bovine runs a successful coaching and speaking business, and he's spent over 2 decades mastering sales.
And Laura DeFranco is an expert healer, 2 times business owner, 6-time published author, and spoken word poet.
Together, we're here to help you create your high vibe business. Hey, you guys, today we're going to be talking about growing your business through podcasting specifically, and the publicity that you can get by being a guest on podcasts.
Absolutely. And we've started off by reading another phenomenal testimonial out on Apple Podcast. This is from G Rott. So G-E-R, capital R-O-T-T.
I love these names. Oh my God, these names.
We talked about, guys, we should just go through and read all these names because they're phenomenal. Whoever Al's the 27th biggest fan, I'm reading that one in the next episode. But it says the 2 of them, Laura and Donnie, are great. They bring a lot of clarity and practical advice you can use right away and see some results. Keep it going. I'm looking forward to the next episode.
Nice.
I love that stuff. So thank you, G-Rot. Sounds like I should, do some sort of rap move or something with that.
Did you say rot or rat?
No, G-Rot. So big G, little E.
Got it.
I feel like I'm spelling NyQuil. Big G, little E, capital R, O-T-T.
Okay.
Thanks, G-Rot. Appreciate it. So, here we go. Podcasting.
Oh my gosh. Guesting was a new word that people, like, they were bugging me about using the word guesting in a blog that I had written. I'm like, really? It's a word.
No, it's a thing. It's like a verb, right? It's a move. It's an action.
Yes.
It's something you do.
And it's a revolution because right now, how many podcasts exist in the world?
700,000.
Dude, think about that for a second, you guys. And think about, this is like that whole thing, like, if you think there's competition with what you do, you really just need to remember there are 7 billion people in the world. This is the same idea. Like, there are 700,000 podcasts and you need to get on a few of them.
And this is a cool thing because I was talking about this, yesterday on an interview I was on. Just last year, Google made podcasts searchable. So before, right, you couldn't just look for podcasts, but now you can go to Google, type in whatever word you want. You could say healer, you could say physical therapist, you could say coach, you could say badass, you could say whatever, and the word podcast behind it, and Google's going to pull up specifically all the podcasts underneath that genre, that name, that everything else.
Makes it so easy, dude. You guys. It's so amazing. So why do we want more publicity through podcast guesting right now?
2 reasons.
Except for the obvious.
Well, yeah, but the biggest thing is it's easy. It is easy to get on podcasts. It's easy publicity, and it's the best place to practice your message and your story in a safe environment, because very few podcasts nowadays are live. They're usually pre-recorded. And then somebody comes back. I learned the hard way about
that. Did you ever do that in the beginning?
What's that?
Did you make them live in the beginning with your own podcast? Like,
no,
did you do them live? Oh.
No. We've edited all the way through. It wasn't until I started doing Facebook Lives that I told my team, I'm like, quit editing. Let's just run with them.
Yes.
Put an intro, outro on them, and let's go. But at the very beginning, we were heavy editing because I was nervous about it. I was nervous about, was I saying the right things? Was I doing the right things?
Yeah.
And, so I was worried that I would say the word right, or I would say, and,
cares,
being
right?
another one. The first time I had one of my shows transcribed, the gal came back to me. She goes, I think you said, like 500 times through that episode. I'm like, shit.
Well, gets back to your thing about this is such a great place to practice. So I talk about my podcast as a kind of a practice place for people who maybe haven't guested before, and they're just trying to get, a little bit of practice telling their story for the first few times. It's, most interviewers are pretty good that way.
Yeah.
They can pull you, and if they aren't, you'll know right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I first found podcasting, I know very specifically, it was April of 2018 when I guested on my first podcast, and it was May of 2018 when I launched my show. And the reason I launched my show is because I met one of those really bad podcast hosts. And I don't think, guys, personally for me, I don't think there's ever such a thing as a bad guest. I think there's only a lousy host that can't pull the information out of them.
That's important. Yes.
But I did meet a very lousy host. And I'll just tell the story because it's fun. But literally, this guy sent me 20 questions before I came on the show. And I thought, oh my God, nobody's ever sent me questions before. How cool and organized is this guy? And I was really excited to go on his show. And I can't say his name because he's still out there, Eric, because you can go find it, I'm sure. But we start off the show and he's like, question 1. Cool. I answer question 1 and I'm, starting to feel it. And he goes, question 2. And I answer question 2. He gets to question 3 and you can go hear it on the episode. I go, oh shit. And so I answer question 3 and he goes, question 4.
Oh,
so I start asking, I'm like, dude, so how did you get into podcasting? Tell me your story. And he goes, question 5.
Oh
no. and I was like, oh my God, he did this through 20 questions.
Wow.
And, I tried to play with him through the whole thing, but he just,
wasn't
stoic and that's how it went. And that's really what I said, dude, if this guy can find any success, I'm in.
Okay, listen, this is the biggest lesson of this, and you tell me what you think, but please, if you're going to be a guest on someone's show, go listen to a show first, because you probably would have known if you had listened to a show,
So what happened in that moment and why I was doing, because I was on 67 shows in 30 days.
Wow.
Because what happened, I went on a show. The show aired. I picked up a coaching client because they reached out because they had heard me on the show. And I'm like, oh my God, I can go on a podcast and grow a business. Hold my beer and watch this shit. So
nice.
I went after every tactic. And we could talk very specific about tactics I used to get on podcasts. But and so I just started going after it. I wasn't doing any pregame research or anything. If I was just, putting out questions, do you have a podcast? And if anybody responded, dude, they were getting a message, a phone call, something. I was coming on their show. And that's how I ended up on this guy's show. Since then, I've learned a lot of smarter ways, such as doing, review and research on the show before you go on there.
Yeah,
now, people
I'm like you too. Like I would rather share my message than not. So I don't mind that I'm on whatever ones, some are good, some are bad, some are small, some are big. And you actually have a specific idea about the small, newer shows. Tell us more about that.
So what I found is, and a lot came from when I launched my own show, is most podcasters, when they start out, they usually have this idea that it's going to be fame and fortune, by launching a podcast, and that's going to set their business up for success. It usually gets to about 10 episodes. They're like, oh shit, what do I do now? What do I interview people? What do I say? What do I do?
Yeah.
But 10 episodes is really kind of that first milestones that most podcasters hit, where they realize this is a hell of a lot more work being a host than I really thought it was. So what I tell everybody to do is go find the shows with 10 episodes or less. And the reason you do that is when you hit their website, odds are they're not going to have a thing on there that says request to be a guest. They're not going to have something in there you got to fill out. They're going to have a contact me page. And when you go to the contact me page, it's going to be an email. And you literally say this. And now go listen to the show before you do this reach out. But you go listen to an episode. You don't have to listen to the whole thing. Listen to enough that you can get some tangible takeaways. And then you send an email off to the host and you say, hey, what a great show. I really enjoyed episode X. where you talked about X. These were my biggest takeaways from that particular show. Guys, I promise you, if they have less than 10 episodes and they get that email, there's another move in there yet, they're going to be running around their house freaking out because holy shit, somebody's listening to their show.
Yeah, nice.
Right. And they're going to be just stoked that somebody's reached out. Your next move is based on your show and what you talk about. I think my story of X would help your listeners learn X. Do you ever bring on other guests for your podcast? And dude, I'm telling you, that simple maneuver on a show with less than 10 episodes, they are going to gobble you up because odds are you're the first person that ever reached out to be a guest on their show. And it's a win for them.
Yes, that's a big win for them. So let's talk for a couple of minutes about platform and the win-win of guesting and sharing, and how even guests are chosen sometimes. Yep. And like how not to freak out about rejection. And there's so many topics here, right? But I mean, essentially we want to encourage you guys to submit applications for podcasts and just go for it.
Yeah,
but what
absolutely.
about some of those other ideas?
So let's talk about things you don't do to a podcaster. You know, for my show, don't start off with I wrote a book. I don't give a shit that you wrote a book. And what you just told me in that 2 seconds is the only reason you want to be on my show is to get publicity for you. That brings no value to me as a host.
Okay, can I put a 2 cents in there?
Sure.
There have been many that I have found that want authors.
Yes.
So this is research, you guys.
Yep.
So just make sure you know what you're getting into when you submit that application, and you have to know your host and their show. And it may say, we love authors. If you wrote a book, you're in type of thing. So yeah, it can go either way.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the second thing is listen to a damn show beforehand. Know what the show is about. Excuse me, but know specifically what that host is trying to get out of somebody's story. You know, my show is, if you listen to it, it's all about, you know, the mindset behind how someone found success. And I want to dive into what they went through and show the tenacity and grit it took to get to where they want to go. So when people reach out to me and they're like, well, I can speak on blah, 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 blah. I can speak on blah, blah, blah. I don't care. This is my show, just to give you guys an idea. But when they reach out and they say, hey, this is what I went through to get where I am now, and this is what I do now, I'm like, fuck, there's my story. Right?
Yes.
I can already feel it.
Very similar in my realm too. Brave Healing is, you know, it's about what you do and possibly the book you wrote about it and what you offer, but it's so much more about the story of how you got from there to here and how you came through the healing and then decided that you were going to write the book, make the offer, do what you do. You know, it's the storytelling, you guys.
Yep.
Podcasts are fantastic for that. They really are.
Yeah. And how to be a good guest, it's really simple. Your job as a guest is to make the host look like a badass. And hear me on that. That is your job. Your job is not to sell your shit. But if you go in and you make that host look like a badass by not being the salesperson that's constantly saying, hey, here's my program, here's my book, here's this, by going in and having a real damn conversation. As host, you know, I tell everybody, like, before they come on my show, I'm like, look, nobody gives a shit about your bio. Let's have a conversation about where you've been, where you've done. And I love it when, you know, somebody on the show is like, wow, I've never really gotten a chance to share that portion of my message. You know, but that's my job as a host, is to get that information out of them. But when you're into an authentic, you know, like you're having cocktails type conversation, you know, it's real, it flows. Don't be somebody you're not. And it goes back to when we were talking in the last episode about being authentic. It is so important that you show up authentic on these podcasts, you know, and I get it. People are nervous and everything else, but as a good host, our job is to get that nervous energy out of you and get you to a real conversation.
Definitely. And part of this we have to remember is entertainment.
Yes.
People are listening in their cars. They're listening, in times where they're just, chilling mostly. A lot of people are listening to learn. So we have to remember, we're teaching and we're entertaining. And so, like, if you're boring and you don't have a good story to tell and you don't have anything to teach, well, that sucks, because that's what most people are tuning in for.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, it, when you're a guest, you really kind of have two jobs: make the podcaster look like a badass by being authentic and real, and two, be their greatest publicity machine.
Yes.
You know, it's very telling for a podcast host. We can tell who shared the episode and who hasn't, because we
Yep.
can see it in the numbers.
Immediate.
You know,
Yep.
and I tell people now, it's a lesson that I learned, that you don't need big name celebrities on your show. I want the smaller people that are more unknown, because they're more excited to share the episode around and get their people to come listen to them.
Right.
In which so here, and guys, I have a top 200 podcast out there that's been out, top 200 for a year and a half, and I want you guys to hear that. Is I want the smaller unknowns, because those smaller unknowns become my publicity machine. And here's a trick that nobody tells you: is if you share the show the day it comes out, groovy, awesome, beautiful. But if you share it again 30 days later, you're going to be amazed that the more traction and more people will reach out to you. And it's something we learned with our show, and we tell everybody, hey, look, when the show comes out, share it. We love you for that. But if you really want to get some hard traction, share it again 30 days later, because, often you hear something and you're like, oh, I should do that. And then life happens.
Yes.
But then you hear it again. You're like, oh, now I'm pulling the trigger, because here it comes through again.
I love this tip, because you don't see everything every day on social, and you miss a lot of them. And so to repost periodically, and sometimes I'll do a post of the podcast in general, and I might pick 3 or 4 of the topics, and I might say, hey, you guys, did you guys miss these? And I'll just repost. And when if guests are doing that, oh my gosh, like, yep. Thank you for that. I'll say it now, because that just doubles, sometimes triples the effort. It's really great.
Yeah, and you'll find that, some hosts put those videos up on YouTube. Go get the link to that YouTube video. Put it on your website, right? That gives you and them backlinks. Go take the MP3 version, the RSS feed off their site. Put that on your website. That not only helps the host out, but it helps you, because now people are like, oh, this person knows how to get exposure on podcast. It makes them more viable, real, and people can go listen to you, and you can get that trust before they've ever even shook in your hand.
And believe me, podcast hosts talk to each other ask each other who is an awesome guest. And the thing we're talking about right now is one of the biggest reasons why we'll refer somebody. This was a fantastic guest. They were teaching, they had an awesome story, and they were amazing with the shares.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll get more gigs.
So, and it's really, really simple, guys, is treat a podcast like a speaking engagement.
Definitely.
And leverage it. And then the last thing, guys, that I'll tell you on this, to really keep it simple, is have a call to action at the end. Right? Have a simple maneuver. It's like we say at the end of every one of these podcasts: if you want to get more involved, go to yourhighvibebiz.com. And it's a simple maneuver that, because some podcast shows, they forget to ask how people can reach out or whatever else. Make that move yourself. And I'll do it often where I'll say, hey guys, I really appreciate being on so-and-so's podcast. Great time. If you guys would ever need blah, 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 go do this. You want to see a podcaster's face really light up. The last thing you do for that podcaster is, before you're done, interviewing on that show, is you say this: guys, Laura's has a hell of a show here. This has been an amazing conversation, amazing talk. If you got anything out of it, please do me a favor. Go leave Brave Healer a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. Do that call to action for that podcaster. Dude, they're going to tell other people. I did that not too long ago on the guy's podcast, and I had 3 other shows reach out to me once that show aired. because they're like, oh my God, that guy will actually say that on the show. Hell
Come
yeah.
on my show. Come on my show. Yes, it's awesome.
So,
I love that. Love, love, love.
so
Yeah, go be on podcasts, you guys. Go do it. It's
absolutely.
awesome.
It's really, really, really simple. And guys, if you got anything out of this episode, with podcast, one, share it out, leave us a 5-star review, wherever you listen to podcasts, Google Podcast, iTunes, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts, and share this out with a friend. And as you heard with this episode, that sharing, that review, that means everything to us. And that's how we continue to reach more people with our message and our brand.
It really does. Thank you so much for that, you guys. Ready to take everything to the next level, get some better tips for your business, and be in a community that can really super boost you. Come visit us at yourhighvibebiz.com. We've got a free mindset download and information about the mastermind we're running and all kinds of good stuff for you.
Keep being badasses, guys. Rock it out.
See ya.